Oh, hello, and welcome back. It is an absolute pleasure to be speaking to you again after nearly a month away. As ever, I am still your host, Conor Clancy, and you are listening to the Forza Italian Football Podcast, the only Italian football podcast brought to you from inside Italy. Joining me, I have my new trusty duo in Vito Doria and Kevin Pogorzelski. Vito, first, welcome back. I hope you're feeling well after your recent illness.
Yeah, glad to be back on. And yeah, I was a bit worried that I might not make this one, but fortunately, moving it to Monday night European time and Tuesday morning Australian time, I think it's helped a lot. And yeah, it was a tough break for me, but hopefully, we can get things back to normal.
It's good to have you back on your feet. And we told the listeners that it was because Milan and Juve played on Monday night. But in reality, Vito, I pushed the pod back for you. You get the special
Thank you, Connor. Very kind.
In truth, I just didn't want to be left alone with the next guy. Kev, it's a pleasure. Hello.
Hi, Connor. Glad to be back.
Yeah, how was your Christmas? You had an eventful time, didn't you?
Yeah, it was very nice. It was very sunny, and I'm back a little bit bronzed than everybody else in the UK.
You say bronze. It's mainly a shade of pink or red that I'm seeing right now.
Yeah, I'm always a little red.
I can't really speak. I'm the palest person to ever grace the FIFpod, so it's best that I don't say too much. But guys, we are here for a reason, I think, and that reason is Italian football's back. So, guys, are you delighted? Are you as delighted as I am to have Italian football back?
Yeah, well, we had a little bit of Coppa Italia during the week as well, so it was sort of eased us in nicely.
You say that, but you weren't sent off to Bologna and then to Milan for two games that nobody cared about. That game in Bologna I was at last week was tough. It was a terrible match. Everyone knew what the result was going to be, and it was really really cold. I've never struggled to type so much in my life. I was going like one finger at a time. But San Siro is always nice to go to. Even though there were no fans, they still pulled out all the stops in the press room and fed us quite well. So I was happy. But this week I was treated, but we won't get into that just now. I think we will start with right. Let's go. The biggest game of the weekend was Napoli 2, Lazio 1. I should probably more accurately say Napoli's B team 2, Lazio 1. And what we'll start with Lazio. We don't really speak about them as much as perhaps we should, but this is an example of maybe why that's the case, because they keep coming up short against the big teams. They came up against the Napoli side, who were they without? Koulibaly, Hamsik, Alan, Insigne, and Mertens as well. And Inzaghi
Mertens
said
played.
Mertens played. Okay, Mertens played. Inzaghi said the day before that this was an opportunity that Lazio had to take advantage of, given that Napoli were missing players. And Kev, they didn't do it.
No, they didn't, and they looked as though they were showing signs of getting back to form just before Christmas. Maybe the break came at the wrong sort of time for them. Milinkovic Savic finally looked like he was starting to find some form, but they do just have this tendency at the moment to lay down their arms when faced with slightly better opposition.
Why is that? And who should be held accountable for that? Because Inzaghi needs to take responsibility for that, surely.
He does. I'm not sure if they were though lacking a bit of steel in the first few months of the season. I noticed Lucas had been out, and I wondered where he was. I must admit, not watching Lazio that often, I wasn't sure if it was Inzaghi that wasn't picking him, but he seems to have come straight back into the side, and then that sort of coincided with their improvement. He was also voted, I think, over Christmas of their player of 2018 by their fans. So I think it shows how important they think he is to the side.
We did have a piece go up over Christmas about Lucas on ForzaItalianFootball.com, which described him as the anchor of their midfield, which he really is. He's so important in that side. Vito, what do you think about the whole Lazio situation? Because obviously, in 30 of 38 games in the season, they're really, really good. But then for the 8 that really matter, they rarely deliver.
It must be a psychological issue because they do look good against the smaller sides, and for some reason, against the bigger ones, they tend to either just panic or they look less inspiring. What I noticed about this game is once again, Inzaghi sort of went back to his old formational methods, and he had started with Luis Alberto, but he had Joaquin Correa on the bench. And I reckon Lazio are better off when both of them are on the field at the same time. And when Immobile scored that goal, that came from a Correa pass. So, it goes to show that even though Inzaghi in his mind might have wanted to really make the most of Napoli's absentees, I think he should have done better in that aspect by having a far more attacking side, even though the game was in Naples.
Given what else happened this weekend as well, it's a very, very costly defeat for them because they're now below both Milan and Roma and just 1 point ahead of Atalanta and 2 ahead of Samp. So it's very, very tight there, and you need to take these chances when they come, and not many teams will have the luxury of playing Napoli with the bulk of their squad or the bulk of their usual starting 11 missing. But we won't go into it too much, but this was just another example for me of Napoli proving that they have that depth that they were accused of not having last season. Kev, the 2 goal scorers on the day, Arek Milik and Jose Callejon, are 2 of arguably Serie A's most underrated players. Definitely 2 of the most underrated players in the top 6.
I think Callahan certainly. I tweeted after he'd scored the first goal, and it's just where he seems to pop up regularly with those really important strikes or assists, and just kind of goes unnoticed among the flair of maybe your Mertens or your Insigne. And he's been there. Are we coming on to 5 years now? I think you could argue that he was the most important of that sort of flurry of signings under Benitez when he came in that summer. I know Albiol's still there, but Rayner's gone. And as for Milik, hopefully we're now seeing him start to really kick on after the injuries that he had last season.
Yeah, well, in terms of longevity, Callejon has been excellent. Like you say, Albiol's still there, but he's not always been performing at the level that Callejon has. Vito, why do you think it is that the Spaniard doesn't quite get the praise that, say, Mertens and Insigne get? Because so often last season we saw them do that very same move where Insigne would cut in, play a ball over to the right for Callejon, who would get in behind the last defender, and he scored important goals for them.
I don't think his goals are perhaps as outrageous as the ones Mertens and Insigne scores, and he perhaps doesn't have the same flair. Compared to those 2, he's more or less a workhorse, and he's more about his effectiveness than his flair or trickery. That being said, you can even say that he's probably against the stereotype of what Spanish players have become in the last 10 to 15 years, especially with the golden generation. There are so many players in midfield and on the wings who just have great skills on the ball and all that. I'm not saying Callejon is a talentless player, but in comparison to other Spaniards or in comparison to his Napoli teammates, he's more just that guy that just gets the job done. And that's perhaps the main reason why he doesn't get the plaudits that he deserves.
He is quite bizarre in that, isn't he? Because technically he's very good. His work rate is, for me, it's up there with the likes of Mario Mandzukic, who gets praised every week for his performances and his effort. I think with Callejon, one thing that lets him down quite often is his decision making. He doesn't always choose the right pass. He can be a little bit reckless in possession sometimes, and I do think that can really stand against him. Kev, I was speaking to a Polish journalist over the break, and he was asking me questions about Arek Milik in relation to his market value this winter, and if he were to move on, how much would he go for? And he was pushing me to compare him to Krzysztof Piątek. And I'm quite intrigued to see what you two think about this. Vito, I will come to you first, actually. But Milik always does it when he plays. He's had terrible fortune with injuries, but whenever he has been consistently fit, he's been fantastic. And I made the point that I think his technical ability often gets overlooked just because he's big. He's a big guy who can do that job for you. But his goal against Atalanta this season is the perfect evidence to just how good technically he is. So I guess in a long-winded way, my question is, how do you think that Milik stands up to some of Poland's other great strikers? Like we've seen Lewandowski in Germany and Piontek now as well.
Oh, he's definitely up there with them, and goes to show that Poland, they're producing some really good centre forwards at the moment. I must admit, I'm not overly familiar with the whole Polish youth system, and I don't follow the Polish league. But to have this abundance of strikers, I think it's a very good thing for them. And Milik, I think also at his age now, around 24, 25, I think he's close to reaching the peak of his career. And, it's up to the Polish national team coach, Wojciech. I'm not sure how to say his surname, but if he can utilize him, that would be fantastic and give him the right service, because they definitely got the firepower, Poland, and Milik, he can contribute to that. I just think, without turning this too much into a national team issue, I think they need more than Zielinski in midfield. That's probably why they struggled in the Nations League and all that.
Okay, good. Okay, right, that will do it for that game. We've been on it for quite a while. Next, you guys can rest, because I am going to speak for our audio listeners to Dovsky in Turin, where he was at Juventus 3, Chievo 0. And now we will move on then to Inter Sassuolo. A nice scoreless draw in front of 11,000 children at the Stadio Giuseppe Meazza. And it will come as a surprise to very, very few people that Inter were lacking in creativity. Vito, that need for a number 10 continues.
Absolutely. And one of the other rumours coming through this January is that Mesut Ozil from Arsenal is another player linked with Inter. I don't know how strong those rumours are or what the realistic chances of Inter getting him are, but he's another type of player that can sort of add some extra unpredictability in the midfield, provide killer passes, and with his dribbling and vision, I think if Inter were to get him somehow, it would be a fantastic asset. I think, in a way, I'd probably rather go for him than, say, Luka Modric, who they've dreamt about, but the chances of him arriving at Inter are looking lower and lower.
Kev, do you think that someone like Ozil could work under Luciano Spalletti? Because we know what he likes his teams to do, and I'm not quite sure that Ozil fits.
Yeah, I'm not sure what Ozil would do under Spalletti at Inter. But I always feel a little bit disappointed with Spalletti and Inter at the moment. They've missed that creativity for so long. And if you think about the team he had at Roma when he was effectively strikerless and he played Totti, it was almost that 4-6-0 formation. I expected him to be able to think outside the box, while Inter sort of continue on this cycle of not bringing in the right type of player, who's making the decisions there. Regarding the recruitment, because they brought Politano in, but plays more off the wing and hasn't really done it yet. And I think if you're hamstrung as a coach with regards to what you've actually got to use, then you need to sort of be a little bit more creative with how you set the team up, and they're just not doing it. At no stage, I think, should Sassuolo, as well as they've done this season, go to Inter and create more chances than them. Both sides were pretty woeful in front of goal on Saturday. Yeah,
well, it's interesting because I know you said that Sassuolo created more than them, but I mean, Sassuolo did have the Prince playing, which they won't have for much longer. So they're always going to create more than anyone they come up against. But sticking with Inter, they did play with a different setup in the Coppa Italia last week when I was at the game against Benevento. The first half, they lined up with a 4-4-2. Lautaro and Icardi played up top together, and Spalletti was critical of it in his post-match press conference, but I thought it worked quite nicely. The two showed a decent understanding. They complemented each other's skill set quite nicely. Icardi was, as you would expect, the main focal point. Lautaro was more willing to do the runs into the channels on both sides. He was coming deep for the ball when he needed. And then in the second half, Icardi went off. Lautaro went up top on his own, and he worked there too. But then yesterday, on Sunday, whenever it was Saturday, they reverted back to the 4-2-3-1, and they're lacking.
Do you think that's Spalletti appeasing the fans a little? You know, let's face it, they should have beaten Benevento. So they call for Martinez to be played up front with Icardi, and he does it for that game. He then criticises it, says it doesn't work, and then he can go back in the league to what is his tried and tested formation with the players he's got.
I think that's probable, yeah, because really, if he was going to be critical of the 4-4-2, I think he would have needed to play it in another game to be critical of it. He played it for 45 minutes. They won 3-0 in that 45-minute spell. When they reverted back to a 4-2-3-1, the game, that's finished 6-2. So they scored another 3 goals, but they conceded twice. I don't really understand what his problem was, because Lautaro was more impressive than Icardi, even in the 45 minutes when the two played together. So it does seem like he's just determined to stick to this 4-2-3-1 and just hope that something sticks eventually. We've seen João Mario come back into the team. Okay, he's got talent, but is he really the answer to their problems? I'm not so sure. We've seen Politano. He's impressed from the right. Perisic hasn't been himself this season. And something needs to change. And like you said, at Roma, he showed that he had this creativity. Or possibly he inherited players who have been trained to be creative and versatile by the great Zeman. It's hard to know what Spalletti is going to do here, because I don't know. We're back into that frustrating situation of not knowing what success is for Inter this season. Because they'll finish in the Champions League places regardless of what happens between now and the end of the season. And I don't know. You'd think Spalletti could just try something, just see what works, because he's got players there to make it a little bit interesting. And I don't know. It's frustrating from a neutral perspective that Inter are just continuing along this well-trodden road. But we will move on from that, I think. Where better to go than the other half of Milan? We had Vieri Capretta at this game in Liguria. Milan beat Genoa 2-0 away from home. It wasn't quite as comfortable as that, though. I mean, Milan deserved their 3 points, don't get me wrong, but they didn't open the scoring until Fabio Borini in the 72nd minute. What I want to discuss here, Vito, is Andrea Conti. He was forced to come on for his first, what was close to a full game in a long, long time. And he did really well, setting up a goal. And it's not the first assist he has made in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, well, without going too much into the Coppa Italia game, let's just say that it was a great cross to Cutrone, but Rafael had a shocker of a game for some. He cost us the game, and Reina performed miracles. But back to Genoa and Milan, it's good that Andrea Conti is back in the team and that he is providing assists, because there's a good reason why Milan spent the money on him in the first place. He's got incredible pace and he will contribute to the goals despite the position he plays in. So I think that assist there in the Genoa game is a big plus. The only criticism I'd have about that goal to Borini is who on earth was marking Borini? The Genoa defence were all at sea.
Genoa should be worried, right? Because
of course,
Piontek scores an insane proportion of their goals. It's far more than 50%, I think, right? He scored 13 goals, they've got 25, so it's just more than 50% of their goals this season.
And they're only 6 points off relegation.
Absolutely. They're going to struggle. They are in a lot of trouble once Piontek signs for Milan, and it's hard to see anyone else stepping in and getting the goals that he has been scoring. Kouame is a great player. He has the ability to become a great player. He's promising, he's exciting. He's still very, very raw. And it's hard to see where these goals are going to come from. Would you be surprised, Kev, if Genoa slipped down into the relegation zones?
Well, I would. I wrote in the mid-season review over Christmas that their fans actually would have a season without having to worry about it. Chievo and Frosinone are awful, but the other teams could still launch a fight back, and as soon as they lose Piontek, well, I'd be worried.
It's brave of you to actually. It would be brave to say that they might go down because Bologna are terrible as well. Bologna haven't won in a long, long time, and they've got Sansone and Soriano in there who might help them a little bit, but it's hard to see them doing too much of a turnaround. Vito, I wanted to speak about Lucas Paqueta, however you say the kid's name. I'm going to have to get used to it because he looks like an absolute delight to watch. And I have a feeling we could have a lot of fun with this guy in Serie A.
He does show some potential, and I reckon he's got a pretty good shot on him. So, yeah, once a couple of those start flying into the net, then I can see more plaudits start coming in.
Next up, we have Roma 3, Torino 2. In what was a pretty impressive win for Roma, we had Alistair McKenzie at the Stadio Olimpico. So I will speak to him now to get his thoughts. And then we will move on to the game I was at, guys, because this is the best game I have seen this season. And I was saying to you before we came on air that it is the first time I've been reporting at a match live. And in response to seeing a goal go in, my head has just dropped to the keyboard of my laptop because I had to rewrite my match report about 3 times in the space of 15 minutes. And just when I thought I had it done for the final time, German Petzela popped up with the game's 6th goal. Kev, even beyond the goals, this game was really good.
Yeah, it was really competitive. I watched I watched it back after the event, if you like, and watched the full game this afternoon, and it was just how competitive it was right from the first whistle. Fiorentina clearly are out to sort of improve on a relatively poor season so far this year, and they're still in touching distance of the European places. But people were flying into challenges, particularly Fernandez, who got himself sent off.
Right, you've brought him up. Let's discuss him. He was a complete moron on the day. He had a foul before that, and I thought, oh, that was a little bit strong considering where you are in the pitch, given that it's very, very early in the match. And then when he flew into that second one, everyone just knew. The Fiorentina fans in front of the press box were just, their head was in their hands. They knew exactly what was coming. And of course, he was given a second yellow. And I don't really know what he brings to the team because technically he's not very good. He works a lot, and we know how much Pioli values structure, work rate, and all that. But I think I wrote in my analysis after the game that what he brings in work rate, he lacks in everything else, whether it's passing, shooting, tackling, discipline. He's headless at times. And Vito, can you work out why Pioli keeps selecting him?
It's rather mind-boggling, to be honest, because I don't think he's anything special. And once again, he's an example of why Fiorentina's midfield is their weakness. They've got a promising attack. The defense is quite solid. And although I'm not completely sold on Lafont as a goalkeeper, he has had his moments. The midfield, though, I mean, Vertu, he has his moments, but he's not consistent enough. Maybe it's the position or the role he plays. Jerson, again, very so-so. And Benassi, the main attribute he provides is if he makes those runs from midfield and scores goals. But Fernandez, he's the most, let's be frank, useless of the lot. It's evident that Milan Badal has not been replaced properly, and they should have found a much better option than Fernandez, because I think that inconsistent midfield or unbalanced midfield might be a real detriment to the chances of qualifying for Europe.
Veretout a decent player, right? But it says something that he is by far their best midfielder, because he just shouldn't be for a team that's trying to get into the Europa League. And you hit the nail on the head. Benassi isn't very good either. I don't really know what he does. He scores the odd goal, but that's about it as well. I know Adam Digby's always saying that he can't pass, he can't shoot, he can't tackle. The only thing he does is score 3-4 goals every few months, and everyone says he's great. But he's another who, when he left Torino, I thought it was going to be a good move for him. But he's kind of just been exposed for not quite having the talent that he maybe should have. Kev, we will come to you now. Luis Muriel is back in Serie A. He announced himself to the Artemio Franchi with a double on his debut. Apologised to the Samp fans after both goals. Both were phenomenal goals as well. He ran half the length of the pitch for one, and about 3/4 the length of the pitch for the other. He's obviously a player who has all of the talent in the world, and on his day he's incredible. But it's just a matter of time before it starts to go wrong for him, isn't it?
I think so. I was quite scathing when they signed him. Actually, he's one of these players that will go hit that purple patch, and then as soon as maybe he gets disinterested, rather than somebody else comes in. I likened it a little bit, as oddly that they were playing Samp, to Gabbiadini, who seems to go somewhere, have a purple patch, but Gabbiadini's issue always seems to be that the club that he goes to sign another striker, and that puts his nose out of joint. Whereas Muriel seems to just get disinterested with the environment that he's in, and we'll probably see him out there for the final part of the season. Probably score a few goals for Fiorentina, but come next season, he'll probably be in and out of the side, I imagine, and then probably agitating for a move and disappear to either another Italian club or Spain, wherever he's going to go and pick up a paycheck next.
I think it's a big shout to give him till the end of the season. By the end of March, he'll have his belly on him, and he won't be able to run 56 meters with the ball. As good as Muriel was, all of my attention was on another striker on Sunday afternoon. Because the soon-to-be 36-year-old Fabio Quagliarella, who he turns 36 at the end of this month, Vito, he scored twice. And it was the 10th Serie A game in a row in which he has scored. Last season, he scored 19 goals in Serie A, which was his best career return. This season, he's got 14 already.
We would assume that he'd be able to be breaking that tally and comfortably score 20 plus. And who knows, if he keeps this rate up, or even if he stops at one part of the season and then regains form, it would not be surprising if he even scores over 25. The way the team is set up for him, and the way he is even at 36, he takes his chances. He'll score the more simple ones, but then he'll always score those beauties that just make us feel in awe of him. And he's up in the Capocannoniere race, so it's an incredible achievement for someone his age, and he's a real difference maker for some.
A quick point on Quagliarella.
Go.
He scores those wonderful strikes like he's done this year against Napoli, but that second against Fiorentina, the strength to hold off the marker, who was really, really tugging at his shirt, was just excellent.
Yeah, that's what you expect from strikers. Sometimes it's not about the flair, and even with him, he showed that he's smart enough to make the turn, and even at his age, he's still got enough strength to do what he did. So yeah, that's just how strikers have to be, and he showed that. The only downside for that game was that he missed a reasonably easy chance in the first half.
I think this is harsh to give him. He arrived a little bit too early. The ball was played a little bit too late, and it was smashed in at a difficult.
Yeah, it was a hard one.
I think it's harsh. I saw him getting criticism for that, and I'm not having it, because it's not an easy chance to convert the way that.
Oh no, I think it's more the expectation that it's Quagliarella and the things he can do. So if it was like a young striker or a mediocre striker, you think, yeah, pass was too hard and position wasn't good. But when you see someone like Quagliarella, you think, oh, he'd still find a way to do it.
Right.
Still, 2 goals is still great anyway.
His issue is that he scores goals like that one against Napoli this season, so the bar is higher for him.
Absolutely.
I want to bring your attention to something the listeners might have seen on our Instagram account, at Forza Italian Football, or Twitter, which was Stefano Pioli losing his mind after the game. Because Marco Giampaolo had said that Quagliarella was as good as Muriel, and people got annoyed because Muriel scored 2 goals where he ran a long distance. But being there, Quagliarella was equally as impressive. But Pioli went a little bit crazy. He said, Luis Muriel reminds me of Ronaldo. Il fenomeno. You see the same qualities in his game. When I heard it, I just kind of looked around. I was thinking, I've heard that wrong. You know, my Italian isn't very good. I've missed something. He's not said what I think he has said. So I went online. I was looking around to verify it. Yeah, he compared Luis Muriel to the great Ronaldo. Kev, does it even deserve remarking on? Well,
it isn't the first time it's been said. However, it was always about his inability to keep his weight off. I'm pretty sure I've seen it in the past, but never about their footballing qualities.
No, it was crazy. It was really, really crazy. Cheyenne has come into the comments to say that Quagliarella keeps getting better by age, and that Ibrahimovic must have been speaking about Quagliarella when he said, "The older I get, the better I get, like a red wine." Yeah, a bit of Ibra love. Let's pretend that was him, Quags. I'm trying to think, what have we got to do next? What game could we possibly be missing?
Do you still want to blow your horn on Duvan Zapata and his heroics?
We'll take a trip down to the province of Lazio then, shall we? Where Frosinone just rolled over Atalanta again. That's 9 goals against big Marco Sportiello, who left Atalanta because he was too big for them a couple of years ago. Now he's conceded 9 against Atalanta and he's going to get relegated. But that's not why I'm here. Duvan Zapata. Vito, thank you for the Colombian. Because
yes,
a turgid first few months to the season where he was a liability at times, he has scored 13 Serie A goals in his last 7 games, 14 in his last 8 altogether, including the Coppa Italia, and he looks unstoppable.
Yeah, he's been absolutely superb for Atalanta. You know, I'm still stunned that Sampdoria got rid of him because I thought he was pretty good at Samp. But this run of form, I don't think many people would have seen it coming. He just looks so much more mobile now. And adding that to his aerial threat, I mean, it's like he can just score any kind of goal he wants to now. And this is what Atalanta's been missing for the last couple of years under Gasparini, because Petagna did the hard work, he did the stuff with the team, but he wasn't putting the goals in. With this extra avenue to go and Zapata firing these goals in, this is the real difference between Atalanta, you know, sustaining that run for the Europa League or even making a push for the Champions League themselves.
Yeah, well,
everything is up for grabs. They've got a good chance.
Absolutely. I've been saying it since November, or I've been saying it since August. But Atalanta now have 44 goals. And given that there were, I think, 6 games in the middle of the season where they didn't score once, that's remarkable. So they've effectively scored 44 goals in 14 matches. It's absolutely incredible. And we said this earlier on in the season that Zapata coming to Atalanta could be a real difference maker because he's able to do the things that Petagna does, but he can score more. And he's now proving that. There were times this season where he wasn't even doing the things that Petagna did. When his confidence was low, he was selfish. He was so desperate to get those goals that he was shooting when Papu, Ilicic, Gusens were all in better positions than him. But now it's just working. It's clicking. And hopefully it continues between now and the end of the season because he is a joy to watch. Even from a neutral's perspective, I would imagine he's he's excellent to watch in that front three with Ilicic and Papu just playing to his every need. It's fantastic. But where shall we go? All right, before we finish up, guys, we'll do a quick bit of transfer chat. Oh, I want to talk about Gonzalo Higuain because he's going to Chelsea from Milan, and a lot of people have been saying that he failed at Milan. But Kev, do you think that has he failed Milan, or have Milan kind of failed him in a way?
I think in a way you could say that he's failed Milan from the point of view that I don't think he ever wanted to be there. I think at his age and playing for Juve, he was maybe expecting not necessarily a better offer, but maybe a Champions League clubby, whether that came from Chelsea in the summer with Sarri going there. But obviously we had the drawn out Conte departure. And I think some of that frustration came out when Juve played Milan earlier in the season. So I think that's part. I think that's part of the issue. Because he really should have been an excellent sort of sounding board for Cutrone to work off, if anything. If Milan could have got anything off him this year, it's what Cutrone could have learnt from him. But his nose was probably put out of joint by the fact that he was effectively the pre-Ronaldo signing, if you like, that was supposed to take them to the promised land of another Champions League. And over the couple of seasons that he was there, he never became that person that made that extra little bit of contribution to see them over the line, really.
It's an interesting point that about him never really wanting to be there, and that is probably in part why everything boiled over at the San Siro earlier this season. But replacing him is, I've forgotten his name, Christoph Piontek. He's going to be going in at Milan. I'm intrigued by this because they've already got Cutrone, and now they've got a second young striker, both of whom will need as many minutes as they possibly can to continue their development. Vito, do you think the two of these could just end up getting in each other's way?
I think it is a great case of that happening because they are similar type of strikers. How remains to be seen how Gattuso can make them work together. If it was a different coach, I would say they would come up with a good enough scheme or tactic accommodate them, or even train them to work together somehow. But Gattuso, as we've seen throughout, the season or last season and a half, that is a very basic coach. So I don't think he'll be the guy to make them work together.
And lastly, Kev, last question of the pod. Kevin Prince Boateng. The Prince has left Reggio Emilia, which means I have no reason to go to Reggio Emilia anymore, so I'm quite happy about that because it's a terrible, terrible place. But the Prince, am I the only one that thinks this move makes sense?
Yes. I suppose from one point of view, there's Barcelona haven't got the league wrapped up just yet, but and obviously they're still fighting for the Champions League. I don't know, I've not seen a lot of him over the last couple of years. Obviously he was at Las Palmas, so they clearly have seen him play in La Liga. He gets a lot of media attention, but it shocked me. It was the one thing that kept me interested this afternoon in social media.
It's going to be a short-term fail for them. Valverde has been saying basically since October that he wants another striker, and it's going to be on a temporary basis. So Prince gives you that versatility. He's excellent. Everything Sassuolo did went through him. He's got the ability to play as a front man, as he has done in Reggio Emilia this season. I think he's a really, really good player, and he'll probably go somewhere in the summer and get paid an astronomical amount of money, whether it's in China or the US. But like I said, he was at Las Palmas and he smashed it. And then he was at Eintracht Frankfurt and he helped them win the cup. And then he did really, really well at Sassuolo up until he got that injury, and then it's been kind of hit and miss since. But I really like Prince, and I think he'll do a decent job if he's given enough a chance at Barcelona.
Big fish in the pond.
Yeah, there's potentially something in that. But when was the last time he was afforded a real chance in a big pond? Probably Milan in his first spell there. And he was all right for the most part when he was playing with good players. when he had Ibrahimovic alongside him, he was very, very good. He'll be at Barcelona with really elite players, so I could see it working. When he went back the second time, it was a bit of a mess. But Sid Lowe did an excellent interview with Prince, actually, while he was at Las Palmas. And it struck me just how much he matured. Because obviously when he was younger, he was mad. An interview went up on Marca, actually, when was it? 2-3 years ago? And it was doing the rounds again today, obviously, with him going back. And he was speaking about how he was so immature as a youngster, but he had learned how to handle everything a lot better as he got older. And my big regret is that I never got to speak to him while he was here. Hopefully he'll make a return. Maybe he'll go to Parma or Atalanta or something in the summer. Who knows? Guys, we've done it. Thank you very much. The first podcast of 2019. It's great to be back. Vito, thank you for joining us.
Yep. No, it was all good, Connor. Yeah, and glad that I was healthy enough to speak on today.
Perfect. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you again. Kev, it's been good.
My pleasure as always.
Jose asks, what do we think of Zaniolo? Well, to answer that question, Jose, I will direct you to ForzaItalianFootball.com, where tomorrow morning, this guy, Vito Doria's feature on Zaniolo and the deal that took him to Rome and sent Nainggolan the other way is discussed. So you can read that and you'll find out our thoughts on Zaniolo. Because what Vito says, we think. All right. So for all of your Serie A coverage, of course, head over to ForzaItalianFootball.com. Go to the Instagram at Forza Italian Football. We've been smashing it with stories, feed posts, everything from the stadiums. Get us on Twitter at Serie A FFC and Facebook at Forza Italian Football. You really don't need any other website for your Italian football fix. Okay. All there is for me to say until next week. Oh, I just realized I'm going to Milan, Napoli, and Torino Inter next week. It's going to be fantastic. All right, guys. Really, that's it. So all that's left for me to say is ciao for now.